Hey guys, I am here again with Amy and Jennifer, the co-founders of Lucid Studio. And Lucid Studio is a full service agency that works with beneficial brands. And you might be asking, what are beneficial brands exactly? And they're brands that aspire to make a positive impact on people, pets, and the planet as a whole. And they support their clients through brand strategy, design, packaging, marketing activation, and honestly, so much more. So I have Amy here, and she leads the brand and creative strategy side, and Jennifer leads account strategy and operation. I brought them here today to start talking about a really big topic, which is activation and marketing. And really, how does this all come together with your brand strategy, design, coming up with that guide, and what is the cohesion that you need to have put together to have that successful launch within your marketing? So I'm going to hand it over to Amy and Jennifer to start giving you guys some tips and tricks and things to think about when it comes to your marketing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having us today. We're excited to be back. So marketing, activation, and brand guide. So you mentioned brand guide. Brand guides are so important in terms of gathering all of the information that you've created around your brand strategy, which defines your positioning in the marketplace, your tone of voice, and how you're going to speak through your tone, the words that you use to communicate with your customers, your brand personality. We love developing content for brands around their brand archetype. Are you the hero? Are you the sage? Are you the magician? And you're creating, new adventures and venturing into the unknown with your customer. So it's a way of pulling all of those foundational tools, guiding principles, and elements into one cohesive guide. That's the brand strategy portion of a brand guide. You also have the design and the creative strategy, activation and definition in your brand guide so that anyone that's interacting with your brand knows how to utilize your logo, your color strategy, your photography strategy, which is so important. Carrington, I know this is really near and dear to your heart because photography strategy is very, very nuanced. What is your lighting? Are you showing a 6 o'clock a.m. lighting in your strategy, or are you a little bit more moody in your evening time, or maybe you're a little bit more, there's a little bit more darkness and grit to what you're showing.
Right.
This is very, very important to define so that anyone that's capturing photographs or sharing especially social media content, which happens so quickly, they know, anyone creating that content knows how to show up for the brand and represent that with this quick content that's being creative. Because any of those little disconnects can chip away at a consumer's understanding, trust, and recognition of your brand.
Right.
So all of these are so important.
Yeah, no, it's huge. And one thing that I feel like a lot of people don't always think about is when you have that brand guide, you're including the photography and you're including those keywords to say, all right, we're dark and moody, we're light and airy. Here's some of the examples, but then they're not always thinking about like, wait, how does this also get created? So there's also an image guide, right? So it's saying, here are your angles. If you're working in studio and doing a lot of e-commerce, it's saying, hey, this is what my lighting is, right? And I can tell you, all right, the camera is going to be 3 feet away from the product at this height with these lights in these specific positions. So then we can rinse and repeat and say, I know exactly what we're doing for every single brand and making it just as seamless to flow with that brand guide because there's so much that goes into it. So how do you really morph those two things together, right? I think that's also a huge conversation, is thinking how important it is to have this information put down on paper.
Yep, absolutely.
I think it's overlooked a little bit, and people think of it as it's created and we have this. What do we do with it? It needs to evolve. It needs to evolve with your brand. And so it's a living document, and it needs to be given to everybody internally and all your external partners to understand. So it allows flexibility of who you're going to work with too and who you're going to bring in. And you as a photographer know, and any external partner knows the value of a good brand guide and how that makes your partners faster and your vendors faster. And you can spend more time on some of those nuanced things of like some of the bigger pieces are already kind of outlined, and then you can get a little bit more nuanced. And I like to look at the brand guide they're guardrails. They're not, it shouldn't be restrictive. It shouldn't be something that is too holding back. It should just guide and throughout all your copywriting, your photography, your design, your marketing pieces that you're developing. So,
right. I kind of think of like what you just said is thinking about like when you go bowling, you can put up those bumpers and that can help you hit the strike. But if you don't need them, you can put them down and try something else, right?
Yeah.
So you have that flexibility to like add in the structure or remove the structure at the same time.
That's a great analogy. I love that. Jennifer, I love that you talked about making sure that the brand and the guide is a living, breathing document.
Mm-hmm.
Brands are not something that we should just redesign and then launch it and, leave it, set it on the shelf. We should constantly be evaluating. Is our promise still accurate? Are we still meeting our promise? Did something shift around the personality of what our brand needs to embody? Did the consumer's need state shift and we need to speak to them in a different way, offer a new product, or expand, add some elasticity to our brand architecture to meet the customer where they're at? So it should be a living and breathing document that's evolving as your brand and as we as humans evolve, right? Because brands meet our needs. We're constantly shifting and changing. Each day in some cases we show up anew. So brands should have enough elasticity to evolve as they need so that you can stay relevant.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to your marketing, something I want to touch on is how do you have that brand cohesion in the market? Like whether your product is on the shelf in a retail store or if you're selling online, how do you keep with that cohesion?
Well, a brand guide is key to helping you to understand the assets, the actual literal assets that create and hold a holistic brand proposition. And there are studies that have been done. I'll even relate it back to some of the research that I did during my thesis studies at Arizona State around synesthesia. And synesthesia is a fascinating topic. If you haven't looked into it, it's worth a search. It's very interesting. It's when one of the senses is stimulated and it automatically and involuntarily stimulates other additional senses, right? And we all experience this on some level. And in some of the research and the studies that I had the chance to do, if a brand fell apart holistically, meaning if you offered a product and the copy didn't match to the imagery or match to the brand proposition, it was proven through the studies that it chipped away at consumers' purchase intent. So it's a real fact that if you are not holding to your brand guidelines, your promise to customers, and the expression of that brand through color, typography, imagery, illustration, photography, you're creating a disconnect for customers that does relate back to purchase intent. So it's so important. Brand guidelines can help with that. And then having a steward of the brand, literally usually one person that is stewarding the brand to review it, to understand how to bring those assets to life, to make sure that the brand is holding together. And that is through emails, through, like we talked about, social media, photography strategy. If you're throwing up on your Instagram photos that don't fit your photography strategy at the highest level, that can create a disconnect. Mm-hmm. Or when consumers are in their scroll or the story feed, they're not even going to recognize you and recognize that they need to look a little closer because you're a brand they admire, love, and respect. So very, very important. And also, one of the things that Jennifer and I do is because we have that end-to-end process, we can move any sort of assets or development through very quickly while holding to those brand guidelines because we know the brand inside and out. So whether you're doing marketing activation, brand redesign, creating emails, social media content, or redesigning an interior of a store or packaging design, if you're working with an agency that knows how to do all of these things, then it's going to help you to move faster and create that holistic brand proposition.
Yeah, we like to even if we don't get to develop the final assets, we like to put examples in and concepts in. So anyone that is, maybe it's an internal team member that's taking it over and they have an internal team, we like to put some concepts in there just so they can see it in place. It's not just, here's your photography, no, you put it all together. Here's some examples of what your social feed could look like with all these images in place. Here's what your email signature could look like, and helping put that together, whether we're doing the final assets or not, they have a visual and they have kind of a starting point for them, because anyone taking on a new brand and having to get into that, I mean, we were a part of the process and we built it, so it becomes easy to build those assets. But someone kind of taking that over, we like to have a transition of let's help, we'll build some of these foundational assets, and then we'll review some of the new ones that you create, just so we can make sure and give some feedback until that person gets up to speed in where they're rocking out and they're owning that brand and stuff. There's always a transition period. People shouldn't be intimidated by that. Expect to be a transition and welcome our help into helping them transition to own that.
Yeah, no, that's huge for sure. So before we wrap this up, if somebody is looking to get into marketing and figuring out their brand guide and all these things that we're talking about, do you have 2 or 3 quick tips and tricks that you could tell people to start thinking about, whether they're going to start talking to somebody like you or they're doing it themselves? Like, where do they start?
One, I would say partner with an agency that has the ability to walk you through the entire process, developing your brand strategy, partnering with you on the development of your creative strategies, and having those examples in the style guide, even if you're not going to work with that one agency across all of these different touch points, working with an agency that can at least put the definition around them so that if you have that transition, there are some tools in place. Number 2, I would say, is knowing what sort of brand personality and how you want to show up for your customers is so important. And along with that, we like to talk about brand mentors a lot. So you can have a brand mentor that exists out there today, somebody that you love the way that they show up. And it doesn't mean that you are mocking them. They're a mentor, just like in human life, we have mentors, people that we look up to, and then you figure out your own way to show up, your own authenticity within that. It's just somebody that you look up to. And then 3, always having that brand steward. And one of my mentors growing up, Brian Houck, talked about this a lot. Have that one brand steward that items are filtering through. So that you have somebody that's the stop gate for anything that is off strategy or does not fit the brand. You really need that. It is so important. Those disconnects can really make a difference. And one more thing I would offer is this has come up a lot, just really in my entire career across CPG. Jennifer, I'm sure you've heard it too on the agency side and in retail. A lot of times we, as the brand builders, the marketers, the package design managers, whoever's a part of the development process, we develop all of these assets, right? And before the customer is even used to seeing them and gaining the recognition, we're already wanting to change or evolve the brand. Give it time. Get those assets out there. Let the consumer start to recognize you and your brand, and don't shift things too quickly before they have the chance to see it. And after they have the chance to see it, then slowly evolve. But I think a lot of times, we're creators, we want to constantly change things. Use your social media strategy for introducing all that freshness. Use your stories, because that's 24 hours and then it's out, But in terms of establishing the fundamentals of your brand, give the consumer some time to integrate into.
And they'll get feedback. People love giving feedback.
Oh yeah, they sure do. Yeah.
You'll know where you need to pivot or persevere.
Yeah, those are amazing tips. And I guarantee, at least out of one of those